What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadski, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video, and today we're going to be taking a look at the shooter class in Pirate Rumble. And the reason why we're doing that is because of the newly released Pirate Rumble Legend Esper. Now, I did do some off-screen skis, and I ended up getting him on my third multi, which was pretty awesome, so we're going to be showcasing him today. I have not invested level limit break wanted posters into him. I just feel like I don't personally own like the best shooter characters at the moment. I would love to go ahead and test out stuff like Memory Straw Hat Frankie and the Raizo Shinobu Rumble character. I don't have that character either, and I feel like not having Raizo and Shinobu really hurts because that character with their special enables shooters to survive way longer, and also having another pretty solid damage dealer on the team makes a big difference. But I digress. Let's actually have a look at what Esper does and see how it can kind of synergize with the current teams in Pirate Rumble. So in terms of his passive ability, I did get this incorrect when I did the first initial breakdown of this character. He doesn't give buffs to characters that are both shooter and Psy at the same time. He actually just gives buffs to Psy characters singularly and shooter characters singularly. So it does make him way more usable on mono Psy teams. So this is probably going to be a mainstay on Psy teams moving forward. So for both Psy and shooters, he gives level 6 attack, level 6 defense, level 6 recovery, and anytime one of your teammates are defeated, he gets level 2 attack, level 2 special CT increase. So this is pretty good. It is annoying that he only gets the buffs once another teammate is defeated, because it's just really annoying for that to occur. If it occurred every time he took damage, but make it like a level 1 increase, but every time he takes damage, this gets increased, that would be amazing. But I think honestly, because of the fact that it's a 20 cost unit and you have a really good rumble ability and the special ability, which we'll talk about in just a second, honestly seems pretty good. The special ability for a 20 CT is pretty absurd for what it does, doing a large frontal range 3.75 times attack, and then also, if you have no int characters on your team, he targets one enemy with high special CT for guaranteed force out for 15 seconds. The force out mechanic is pretty strong, as we all know, being able to just completely get rid of something. And this is kind of like when half stats got introduced into Pirate Rumble for the first time. Characters that were able to do it were very valuable, and then eventually what they ended up doing is they started bringing out a lot of characters that would just straight up resist half stats. There are a couple of characters already in the game now that actually resist the force out mechanic, so this could be something that could kind of hold him back in the future. But as for right now, because not many characters have the ability to resist this gimmick, I think it's honestly really good. And remember, you get all of this combined on a 20 cost unit that you can chuck on your team is fantastic. So as long as you are building a team with no int characters, this character is going to be good for that team. Speaking of resisting force out, he does also resist it, and also does even more damage versus int characters, and also receives less damage versus int characters. So just across the board, I think Esper is great. The only real thing that is the issue is that we're looking at shooters specifically. Even though we know that the Psy team is fantastic, Esper on shooters is going to be nice. A very good addition, because shooters definitely need more stuff to make them better. This is the approximate team composition that we're going with here in this video. As I said, I am missing some key characters, but let's see how this performs against some of the difficult challenge quests on single match for Pirate Rumble. Alright, so let's go ahead and have a look at our first clip here, which is going to be against the Urouge challenge. So the thing about Urouge is that he does have like big things and big damage dealing stuff versus specifically Psy enemies. So going basically with like a Psy versus int kind of squad here. And the team that you're seeing that I'm using at the front here is a little bit different from what we used in, or what you guys saw at the start of the video, where in the front line, right in the middle position, we have Chopper. Now, Chopper does have a very good rumble ability, probably one of the better rumble abilities you could be running on a shooter team. The thing about it, though, is that Chopper is like solely focused on healing and like utility stuff, like he removes like special bind paralysis, very similar to what he does in normal content. But he's not really good for shooter teams because he doesn't provide much damage output. He's just there solely as like a defensive style unit, whereas you see with Kizaru Borsalino, very good HP cut, and then they do like okay damage, right? The thing about Borsalino and Kizaru is they have the health cut mechanic in them, which is good. Not a lot of shooter characters do like good HP cuts, and they do that plus the bit of damage on top of it, which is kind of nice. And they also give themselves further special CT increase for a short period of time, so it just means that it's a little bit easier to charge their special a second and a third time if you can somehow cycle that. Ace is a mainstay for for shooter teams right now, just because of the defense reduction and then really good damage. Very similar kind of damage that you would see from like V2 Odin on a Free Spirit team. Like, very similar, but of course, V2 Odin gets access to the action bind mechanic. If Ace had that, man, it would help out so much. Because being able to just stop the opponents from doing their thing, it would really help out shooter teams, which is exactly why Raizo and Shinobu are probably like one of the main characters you kind of need for shooter teams to be super successful, because they do really good damage by themselves, and being able to guarantee action bind for the characters against your opponent is just massive. It just allows your shooter characters to actually do damage and be like uninterrupted by your opponent's effects, and that really does make a massive difference. I don't really know if Uta is going to be like a main choice for this team as well moving forward, because there are actually quite a lot of characters you could be using. One character I wish I could fit on this team is the Rumble Rare Recruit Borsalino, the quick one from Film Red. Mainly because I have him at level 150, and he does do really good damage when he's able to launch his special. But of course, the overlap with Kizaru is just frustrating in One Piece Treasure Cruise, as you've got like the Sai Borsalino legend, who's fantastic for the special CT stuff, and then you got like Kizaru Borsalino because you kind of need shooters to do damage. It's just a really frustrating overlap. But you're seeing towards the end here, my opponent really can't do much here, and we're just consistently wiping the floor with them. So luckily, we're able to get the win here versus the Urouge boss without too many hassles. Moving on to our next team up is going to be versus Hachi, and this is where I actually switched up the front line, took out the Chopper, and I put in Legend Ein from a Kizuna Clash. Now, the thing is I did test out the Chopper build, and the Chopper build just wasn't doing enough. So I switched out Chopper, and I ended up putting the dual unit of Usopp and Yasop. And I felt like that would have been a really good option for the team. They've got a great Rumble ability, and their special ability does have the potential to inflict half stats. But the issue with Usopp and Yasop is that they only inflict half stats on characters that have max special CT. So if all the opponents have used their specials, they just don't do the half stats against those characters. However, with Ein is guaranteed to inflict 3 enemies with high HP for guaranteed half stats. And I felt like that was going to be really valuable, because being able to inflict half stats to the opponent is just another way for our shooters to actually do good damage against the opponent. Unfortunately, in this team setup here, you do see that Ein actually launched after Ace and Kizaru Borsalino used their specials already. However, because of Esper coming in and consistently doing pretty good damage at very low special CT, and also guaranteeing a force out, it's just another really good way to stop the opponent from doing what they're doing. Being able to just instantly use the special on a 20 CT, doing very good frontal range damage, and then just blowing away one character for 15 seconds, just halting that character from being able to do anything against you, is actually really strong. And as I said a little bit earlier in the first clip, being able to have potentially Esper and Raizo Shinobu next to each other to just halt everything that your opponent's doing, whilst also doing good damage against them, that's a really good combo. And I do think that combo Raizo Shinobu Esper, it's going to be very frustrating to play against, something that you really definitely need to look out for. But it's just the fact that shooters just need more. We just need more stuff in order to make them actually good. Like, I think that they do need a couple of other key pieces. I think if they had more characters for special CT increase, I think that would be really, really nice. Like, Uta does provide some stuff, but she's far from perfect, honestly. And they are relatively squishy, I feel. At least in my experience, I felt like the shooter team just dies pretty quickly. They don't have a lot of good defensive capabilities, which is why also Ein was another decent choice for this team, because inflicting half stats against the characters halves their damage, obviously, which can help out with being able to survive a little bit longer in this fight. But you do see here that because we've been consistently just blowing away a character, basically they've only had like 4 characters on the front line for a lot of the time, and Esper doing so much damage definitely makes a big difference for shooters being able to be a little bit more successful. And we go ahead and move on now to the Shiki fight. Now this one actually, surprisingly, we just got through it like pretty straightforward. Like there really weren't that many issues at all. Esper being an absolute beast once again. One thing that we haven't actually talked about for this specific team is the bench lineup that I've chosen. So shooters have access to some pretty decent characters you could slot into the bench lineup. I've opted for Rebecca Toy Soldier because I'm running so many side characters on the team, and you know, the fact that you could be using Esper with like Rebecca Toy Soldier, like that's good synergy. We're using Ace, Uta, and stuff like that, so I just felt like it worked relatively well. As for the other two characters, we're using Kuma because he's a 20 cost unit, he's a shooter, even though Kuma's abilities are mainly focused around strength characters, which doesn't really help out the team except for himself. It does make Kuma in some aspects being self-sufficient. Because he's a shooter character, he gets buffs from the rest of the team, and also Kuma's special is fantastic, being able to do huge amounts of damage that goes through defense. And then Sakazuki 6+ was just like the final pick that I chose because once again it is a 20 cost character in Pirate Rumble, and he's a shooter character, and it can kind of work out synergy with Kuma because he's a strength unit. But realistically, like Sakazuki would not be the mainstay for a shooter team, unless if you opt to build a shooter team around strength, dex, and quick characters. But realistically, that's probably not the most optimal way to build strength-focused teams. If this team did have Raizo and Shinobu on it, then I think I would probably put Kuma in the 6th position. I think that would work out a lot better. Rebecca Toy Soldier, of course, not giving buffs to Raizo and Shinobu, but despite all of that, I feel like that works out pretty well. But you know, honestly, I want to revisit this once I'm able to get my hands on some of those other characters that I've talked about, like the memories of Straw Hat's Frankie. I think he's also a decent option for shooters, and also like the Raizo Shinobu, which we've consistently talked about throughout the video. That character is a menace. Going up against that, I absolutely hate going up against Raizo and Shinobu, and the cool thing about that unit as well is that it's a slasher and a shooter, so you could technically use it on a slasher team if you wanted to do something like that. But yeah, luckily for us, this Shiki fight that we're going up against doesn't really have any like crazy big threats to really be worried about. Yes, Yamato can do decent damage, but like there isn't really that many big damage dealers against this Shiki fight that you kind of have to worry about. And then moving on to the final team of the video, which is going to be up against the Kawamatsu slasher team. I really wanted to go up against the slasher team just to see what this team was capable of doing. Now, the Kawamatsu fight is not the most difficult of the Pirate Rumble slasher single matches to go up against, but it does still have some pretty big heavy hitters. You've obviously got V1 Odin still, can do some pretty big damage. You've obviously got K-Dad, who worked great with V1 Odin, but K-Dad can do some pretty good damage by himself. And of course the mainstay in Roger and Newgate. But like going up against a character like S-Hawk could definitely also be an issue. But the thing is because Esper has such a low special CT, Esper has a really good chance of just knocking out one of those big damage dealers, which means you can kind of ignore him for 15 seconds, which is kind of nice. The one thing though that could also be an issue is the fact that Esper can knock out a character with he can just knock them out or blow away, force them out. But that also means that you can't do damage to them whilst they are forced out, which means that when they eventually come back after those 15-second cooldown, that they can just come in and their special CT is unchanged when they come back after the force out mechanic, which means that they can just come in, launch their special, and you can just die. So yeah, there are definitely some drawbacks to the force out mechanic, but I think the positives definitely outweigh the negatives in my opinion. You do see there that a couple of characters, Ace and Ein, got knocked out very quickly, which gives Esper a bunch of special CT and attack buffs, so it means we're going to be able to see their special again, launch again. But you see Kuma coming in, Rumble legend Kuma comes in and does a bunch of damage to the opponent, especially the 2 hits of damage through defense is really significant for the squad. And things were looking a little dicey, but we did have the upper hand in terms of characters available. You do see that the K-Dad was the character that was forced out. They return and they immediately use that special, which is a little concerning because, as I know, shooters don't have the greatest bulk out there. Luckily, we're able to tank it relatively well, and the thing that I'm just hoping for is Esper to come in, and luckily he does come in and wipe the floor with the opponent there. But that's going to wrap it up for me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Other than that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.
おとなしくしてくれないかね。こっちは世界の